When people ride coasters, they focus on its height, its speed, how many times it goes upside down, how crazy is that launch, does it have crazy airtime, is it well themed? But you know what? If the trains suck, none of it really matters. A ride has a bunch of different elements, but as you move from one to the next, you're stuck with that train the whole ride. Today, I feel like whining, but I don't want to be entirely negative, so I'll end on a positive note. These are the most uncomfortable and comfortable coaster trains. First off, this is just based on my experience, so if you have anything to add to this conversation, be sure to do so in the comments below. We'll start with the bad ones and end with the good ones. As always, a few honorable mentions. Magnum XL200 is one of my all-time favorite coasters, but those old aero lap bars are brutal. You find these on Desperado also. Gemini's aren't too good, but Magnum's airtime is so ridiculous. You feel that little bar jam into your lap, and it makes that finale just a little bit hard to take. Every B&M coaster with a vest restraint is playing a dangerous game. When you sit down, it's not too bad, but as the ride gets going, that vest gets tighter and tighter, and on the coasters with high positive Gs, or the ones that run rough and hammer that vest down. By the end, sometimes I want to scream in pain because of how bad it's pinching my thighs. The two that left me in the most pain were Thunderbird at Holiday World, and, most recently, Iron Menace at Dorney Park. The Gerstlauer trains on the original RMCs, New Texas Giant and Iron Rattler, are pretty comfortable on the surface. But where normal RMCs have a nice big padded shin guard, these have a much smaller bar, and when the ride-out pushes that lap bar down, it digs into my shins. I've marathoned both of these coasters in the past, and it's not unusual to have a big old shiner on my shin by the end. Timberline Twister at Knott's was not built for tall people. That makes sense. It's a kid's coaster, but of all the coasters I've ever ridden, this is the only one where I had to twist my legs into a pretzel. I got the credit, so it's all good, but I was just walking around funny for the rest of that day. Last one. The old Revolution trains were just stupid. Shoulder restraint and lap bar. Everything was so bulky. This didn't open with all that junk, it was added later, and in 2016, they went back to just a lap bar and it was so great. It wasn't that uncomfortable, just weird and inexcusably stupid. Number 15. Moto Coaster at Dreamworld. This has a bad reputation for having weird seating, and they have a test seat out front so you can practice before you get on. Needless to say, I was a bit confused to start. Luckily, Riley was there to help me out, but it didn't make the train any more comfortable. I know what they were going for, riding a motorcycle, but the whole time I kinda wished I was in the sidecar, sitting down like a normal person. And in the end, I think this ride was a bit overhated and it wasn't as bad as people say. Number 14. Gale Force at Playland's Castaway Cove. This S&S LSM coaster has 4 across seating, 3 rows per car, vest restraints, and wide set handlebars. Not bad on the surface, but I think this ride's angles made this setup not so great. This launches up and dives down, goes into a kickflip, bangs all kinds of weird angles, and unless you're in the front you can't really see, so I was banging my elbows on those grab bars. A more open setup would be nice, but given this ride's forces, I get why it had to be more restrictive. Number 13. The RMC Raptors. From the start, I've never been a big fan of the shoulder harnesses. RMC is supposed to be all about the airtime, and their iBoxed wooden coasters have good lap bars. And when they rolled out these Raptors, we get these shoulder restraints, and it's not good. Intamin found a way to get lap bars on their hot racers. RMC didn't do the same for their Raptors. Still, that's not even the main reason it's on this list. I'm more concerned with a big box right in the middle where your feet go. You're forced to straddle it, put your feet off to the side, so you're kinda sitting knees together, feet out, and it's hard to get good airtime that way. Number 12. Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens Tampa. When Intamin opened their launch looping coasters, most of them had these hard over-the-shoulder restraints. Over the years, most of them got an upgrade. Those hard straps were replaced with soft straps. Cheetah Hunt, for some reason, never made the change. For as big as Busch Gardens is, and as popular as Cheetah Hunt is, you'd think they'd be among the first to make the change, but no. Last time I rode this in 2022, I felt them, especially on the inversion. They do dig into your shoulders, something the soft straps absolutely don't do. You gotta think, at some point, Busch Gardens will show up to this party. Number 11. B&M stand-up coasters. Unlike most coasters, you need a strategy for riding these stand-ups. They want you to stand up straight, but you may want a little give. Bend your knees a little bit. Whatever you do, make sure you're not hanging when the seats lock. You want at least some part of your feet on the ground. I always end up half standing, half resting on the little bike seat, and it seems like no matter what you do, there's no way to be comfortable on a stand-up coaster. Number 10. Zambezi Zinger at Worlds of Fun. This was my first battle with an Infinity Flyer. These new GCI trains designed to go upside down, and as much as I love Millennium Flyers, Infinity Flyers are terrible. These seats were hard and small. They felt like they made you lean forward instead of sitting up straight or leaning back like all other trains. And that T-bar made it almost impossible not to get stapled. I get it, the Millennium Flyer trains weren't meant to go upside down, so they're more free. But Zambezi Zinger doesn't go upside down, so I wish they'd go with the good trains. Number 9, the Coney Island Cyclone. Your only prayer is to ride this one rider per row, or ride it with a kid. Those seats are very well padded, but they're tiny, and that lap bar has a weird bar on the bottom of the main bar, making it even a tighter squeeze. I bet this is by design, making it more secure, but I was squashed the whole time I rode it. There's not much you can do about the lap bar, but if you're going with 2 full-grown adults, if you can, try to get your own row. Number 8, Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas. Kind of a similar story to Magnum, but worse. These old Schwarzkopf trains are small, and they use the least amount of padding possible. I'm sitting there with my knees jammed into the seat in front of me, looking at the tiny steel lap bar, and as much as I like rides that have a minimal restraint, this ride has some wild airtime that doesn't play well with tiny steel lap bars. I know, people were smaller back in the old days, but I gotta imagine, even in 1978, people were squished in there, and even they were getting a lap full of metal on those drops. Number 7, Premier Rides LIM Launch Coasters. I'm talking about Mr. Freeze, Poltergeist, Joker's Jinx, those Premier launch coasters from the late 90s. Having you sit deep in those seats, you feel like you're in a tub with how low they go, and you have to buckle your lap bar into a slot in front of you. These also have shin guards, and those are generally not comfortable. It's hard to get in and out, but the fact is, a lot of these old coasters open with shoulder restraints, and despite not being great, it's so much better now with just a lap bar. Number 6, Jetstar 2 at Lagoon. You need a partner for this ride, and the reason for that is you need to wedge yourself into those cars. The mass of the other person helps wedge you into the seats, so you better know and be comfortable with the person you're riding with. You're either sitting in someone's lap, or someone is sitting in yours. The ride itself is also pretty janky. That just adds to the chaos of the way you're jammed into the train. Just a seatbelt around you, and it's one of those rides where, even though it's fun, it's a weird experience that makes you want to make it a one and done. Number 5, the old trains on Manhattan Express in Vegas. When you pay $17 to ride, or whatever it is now, you'd hope they could spring for a decent train to sit in. They did improve that train a few years ago. Well, sort of. I'll get to that later. But the old trains had a lap bar and those little shoulder restraints you pull down, and it didn't help that it had those super high seat backs. So, unless you're in the front, you're sitting with 2 blunt objects around your neck and no way to see what's in front of you. Still, not a problem as long as the track is well profiled. Unfortunately, this is one of the worst profile coasters I've ever seen, making for an expensive, nasty ride up until a few years ago. Number 4, the old trains on Skyrush at Hershey Park. I'm sorry, I couldn't let Skyrush off the hook. They did a good job making the seats themselves comfortable, but they put the worst lap bars ever on them. No matter how hard you tried to keep them from cutting your legs off, too bad, your legs were coming off, especially with all those strong airtime moments. Never have I looked forward to strong airtime less than on Skyrush. It was so bad, they even installed a mechanism on the brake run that loosened the lap bar. They knew every man, woman, and child on that train was in searing pain by the end. For all you Skyrush defenders, even the park knew this was terrible, and in 2024, they replaced those lunch tray lap bars with sane ones. Number 3, Ice Mountain Bobsled at Enchanted Forest. One of the weirdest coasters I've ever ridden. You ride in these little cars with a rubber roof, going into an icy mountain and down into the woods. Not a bad coaster from start to finish, but a few times during its course, you get a little pop of airtime, and that's not fun when your head is up against the roof. It may depend on your height, if you're in the front or the back, but I'm sitting there, 6'1", in the front of that car, my head shoved downward the whole ride, trying to enjoy the ride experience while wondering if I should have packed a helmet. Number 2, Swiss Toboggan at Little America. Speaking of enclosed cars, on Swiss Toboggan, you're on your own. You see this coaster that looks like it was dropped off by a pickup truck that same day, going up a 45-foot steel tube and wondering if this is truly the last thing you're going to do on this earth. Once again, this is not tall person friendly, and I imagine if you're like 6'4" or taller, you really gotta hunch in there and hope for the best. I was not prepared the first time, and when it hit that first jerky airtime hill, I jacked up my neck pretty bad. So, an uncomfortable experience combined with a week-long pain in my neck. Number 1, the new Premier Rides trains. I wasn't a big fan of the LIM trains from the late 90s, but the new ones they came out with over the last 15 years are just the worst. This is by design. They're meant to be small, and once you're sitting down, it's really not that bad. However, getting in and out of these trains is the freaking worst. This is even worse when it has a comfort collar. These things flopping around, you having to move these aside while navigating the 4 inches of space you have to enter the train, and then doing the same dance getting off. Try not to jack up your knees. Try not to get whacked in the head by your comfort collar. I don't care how big or small you are, these are hard to finagle, and I think this is a universal opinion. Okay, now for some positivity. Let's celebrate the top 10 most comfortable trains. Number 10, the Intamin T-Bar. These trains aren't that comfortable per se, but it's nothing to complain about. You have the openness you feel with those wide open trains, that lap bar not dig into your lap when you get airtime. It's one of the most perfect setups ever. Number 9. Goliath and Titan at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Over, Texas. These Giovanola hypers aren't good when it comes to their ride experience, but I give Giovanola credit where credit is due. They know how to make an ultra smooth ride, and they know how to make a great train. Those seats, combined with that big padded lap bar, they nailed it. Number 8. Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket at Universal Studios Florida. You may hate the ride, but those seats are like a luxury theater experience. They're huge, wide set to fit the speakers for the on-ride audio, comfortable lap bars also. These are pretty sweet. If this does shut down, I should get one of those cars for my living room. Number 7. Whizzer at Six Flags Great America. These are kind of similar to Jetstar 2, but they are so much more open. You don't need a partner for this, so you could just be chilling in your sled, nothing but a seatbelt, just living your best life. And even if you have another person sitting with you, it's still pretty comfortable. I mean, just look at this guy. He's so comfortable, he's about to fall asleep. Number 6. Cyclone at Wonderland. The only thing better than just a seatbelt is nothing at all. Cyclone is a 1968 Mylar Wild Mouse, and you just sit in this very nice padded bathtub, usually by yourself. If you're with a kid, you can fit 2 in there. You're sitting pretty deep in that tub, but just sitting there unrestrained. It's hard to get better than this. Number 5. Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. Not only do these trains look great, all those effects imply this is some kind of time machine, but they are so comfortable and the lap bar is great. I haven't had the best luck with Mach Ride's lap bars, but these come down over your head. They may feel tight at first, but they loosen up, and this is one of the rare Mach coasters I don't get stapled on, ever. Number 4. Gravity Group Timberliners. It took me a couple rides on Switchback to learn how to ride this, but once you get it, it's hard not to love the Timberliners. The seats are huge, no cramming yourself into them, and the lap bar is what can get you. You need to figure out how not to get stapled. Getting a ride on an airtime-filled Gravity Group with Timberliners, that's some good stuff right there. Number 3. GCI Millennium Flyers. As much as I lamented the new GCI Infinity Flyers, I love the Millennium Flyers. I think the greatness of Millennium Flyers makes me even more bitter to the Infinity Flyers. Great padded seats, very roomy. Those T-bars that come down are very high on your torso, so it's very easy to avoid getting stapled. And the way these are designed, you can press down on the lap bar when you're going over those airtime pops, and that gives you a little extra airtime. Number 2. PTC Buzz Bar Trains. These are all-timers, zero worry about getting stapled. Those buzz bars come down and rest horizontally, pointing at your stomach and not touching your lap. These aren't as roomy or padded as Millennium Flyers or Timberliners, but the buzz bar makes up for it. When you ride a coaster like Phoenix, you're pretty much riding it without any restraint, coming out of your seat on every hill. You don't find too many buzz bar woodies with great airtime, but when you do, cherish them. Coaster at Playland doesn't have this exact train, but the idea is the same, at least when I rode it in 2019. That one was by far the scariest when it came to the airtime to restraint ratio. Number 1. B&M Hypers. Before sending you up 200 to 325 feet, plunging you into a series of great floater airtime hills, B&M Hypers and Gigas strap you into these glorious trains. The seats are just like recliners, leaning back. Those clamshell lap bars come down, and unless you have an overzealous ride-up, they barely touch you. Given the quantity and quality of airtime on these hypers, you're glad to have a decent restraint, but I think B&M couldn't have done any better to maximize your airtime, your comfort, and keep you alive all the way to the final breaks. That's a wrap on this video. Let me know where you agree or disagree, and what trains you find the most comfortable or uncomfortable. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. I want to thank my Patreons. If you want bonus access, bonus content, and have your name listed at the end of each video, check my links below and join. Also, check out my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.